Hey everybody, welcome to another deep dive. And today we're talking about the book The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy.
Okay.
It's funny, we're constantly bombarded with all these messages about achieving happiness and fulfillment, but this book kind of takes a completely different approach. I don't
Yeah.
know, what do you think?
Yeah, it totally flips the script on us.
Yeah,
That whole pursuit of happiness idea.
right.
It really challenges that.
So we're going to unpack that and a bunch of other fascinating concepts with your help. So buckle up everybody.
Yeah, this should be a fun one.
All right, so right off the bat, the book argues that this constant chasing of happiness can actually make it more elusive, right?
Oh yeah, it's like you're always reaching for something that's just slightly out of grasp.
Yeah, and that's where the whole gap concept comes in, right? It's that feeling of never quite being where you think you should be, always
hmm
comparing yourself to some ideal version of yourself or your life, and they use a pretty compelling example to illustrate this.
Yeah.
Thomas
Yeah.
Jefferson.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's the guy, founding father, president, author of the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
You'd think he'd be the poster child for happiness.
For sure.
But his own writing suggests this lifelong struggle with this feeling of not quite measuring up.
Oh, wow.
It's almost as if the gap followed him even to the highest levels of accomplishment.
Yeah. That's a pretty sobering thought. I mean, if Thomas Jefferson couldn't escape the gap, what hope is there for the rest of us?
Yeah, well, that's where the gain comes in, right?
Okay.
So instead of fixating on what's missing, what we haven't yet achieved,
Yeah.
this concept is all about shifting your focus to how far you've come.
I like that.
It's about acknowledging your progress from a past starting point, which can be incredibly powerful.
So it's instead of looking at the mountain, you still have to climb.
Yeah.
You're taking a moment to appreciate the view from the peak you've already conquered.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is this shift in perspective isn't just some woo-woo self-help mantra.
Right.
There's real science behind it.
Yeah.
Studies show that people who focus on the gain, those who cultivate an attitude of gratitude and appreciation for their progress,
Okay.
they tend to be happier and healthier.
Interesting.
They even live longer.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Optimists actually have a longer lifespan?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I knew a positive outlook was good for you, but I had no idea it could actually impact longevity. Why is that?
Well, one theory is that constantly focusing on the gap, it triggers a stress response in the body.
Okay.
Your system's perpetually in fight or flight mode,
Gotcha.
which over time can lead to all sorts of health problems.
Makes sense.
But when you focus on the gain, you're essentially flooding your system with feel-good hormones like dopamine and serotonin.
Okay.
It creates a positive feedback loop that reinforces well-being and resilience.
And who wouldn't want more of that?
Exactly.
All right. So how do we actually make this shift from the gap to the gain? I know the book talks about moving from a needing to a wanting mindset,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I fully grasp that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So it's subtle, but it's super important. When we operate from a place of needing,
Yeah.
we're essentially saying that our worth is contingent upon achieving something external.
Okay.
It's our happiness is always hanging on that next promotion, that perfect relationship, that number on the scale.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. It's
Yeah.
you're always running on a treadmill, but never really arriving at your destination.
Yeah.
But when we shift to a wanting mindset, it becomes about the journey itself.
Okay.
It's about pursuing things that genuinely light us up.
Gotcha.
Not because we need them to feel worthy, but
Yeah.
because we're intrinsically motivated by them.
So the book uses a great example of this with Trevor Lawrence,
Yes.
the star quarterback.
hmm
He's obviously incredibly successful, but he really emphasizes that he doesn't need football to feel valid.
Right.
He loves the game, he's passionate about it,
Yeah.
but it's not his sole source of identity or self-worth.
Yeah, and that's a key distinction,
Yeah.
right? It's about having a healthy detachment from outcomes.
Okay.
You can still be ambitious and driven, but your happiness isn't solely dependent on achieving those specific goals.
Right.
You find joy in the process, in the pursuit itself.
That actually resonates with me on a personal level. The book discusses Benjamin Hardy's experience, and it really hit home for me.
Uh-huh.
He talks about achieving a lot, externally, but still feeling empty because he was operating from this need-based mindset.
Right.
And it wasn't until he shifted to this want-based approach, focusing on what truly mattered to him,
Yeah.
that he actually found genuine contentment.
And that's the essence of true freedom. wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure.
It's about moving from a place of freedom from to freedom
Now,
to.
wait, what's the difference?
Okay, so freedom from is about removing external constraints,
Okay.
like getting out of debt, leaving a bad job,
Yeah.
escaping a toxic relationship.
Right.
Those are all important, of course.
Yeah.
But freedom to is about this internal liberation.
Oh.
It's about having the self-awareness and the courage to actually choose your path based on what truly aligns with your values and your vision for your life.
Wow.
It's about being the author of your own story.
I love that.
Welcome back. We left off talking about the power of shifting from a needing to a wanting mindset.
Right. Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught in that trap of chasing external validation. Like, if I just get that promotion, then I'll be happy. Or once I hit that financial target, I'll finally feel secure.
Yeah.
But this book really challenges that thinking, doesn't it?
It totally does. And I think it's something so many of us can relate to. It's almost like we're conditioned to focus on what's missing. That gap between where we are and where we think we should be.
Right.
But the gain is about like flipping that script, celebrating how far we've come.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our worth isn't tied to some arbitrary finish line.
Yeah.
The book talks about the importance of measuring your progress backward.
Okay.
And I think that's such a brilliant concept.
Yeah.
Instead of always looking ahead at what you haven't accomplished yet, take a moment to acknowledge all the mountains you've already climbed.
That makes so much sense. It's like if you're only ever focused on the next peak, you never stop to enjoy the view from the one you're standing on.
Exactly. And I think it's especially important in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with these messages about achievement and success. It's easy to feel like we're never doing enough, never being enough.
Right.
But when you take the time to measure your progress backward, you realize just how far you've come. It's a powerful way to cultivate gratitude and boost your self-esteem.
So how do we actually do that? How do we measure progress backward in a tangible way? I know the book mentions keeping journals or records. Is that what they're getting at?
Yeah, one of the fascinating things the book points out is that our brains are actually wired to forget past successes.
Really?
Yeah, it's called the hedonic treadmill. We
Whoa.
get a hit of dopamine when we achieve something, but then we quickly adapt and start chasing the next goal. It's like our brains are always looking for that next fix.
That explains so much. Like no matter how much we accomplish, it never feels like enough. There's always that nagging sense of what's next.
Exactly. And that's why keeping a journal or some kind of record of your achievements is so important.
Yeah.
It's a way to combat that forgetfulness bias and remind yourself of all the amazing things you've already done.
Okay.
It can be as simple as just jotting down a few wins each day or creating a more elaborate system for tracking your progress, whatever works for you.
You know what? This conversation is actually making me realize that I do this without even thinking about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have a whiteboard in my office where I list out my big goals for the year. But then underneath each goal, I have this running tally of all the small wins that are contributing to that goal.
I see.
And it's so motivating to see those wins piling up. It's like a visual reminder that I'm making progress even when it feels slow.
I love that you've intuitively created a system for measuring your gains.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about, finding what works for you and making it a habit.
So what about those reflective questions the book mentions? Are those designed to help us measure progress backward?
They are. The book actually provides several sets of questions that are designed to guide you through this process of reflecting on your gains over different time frames.
Okay.
And I think it would be really powerful for our listeners to take a few moments to actually engage with these questions. What do you think?
I agree. It's one thing to hear about these concepts, but it's another thing to actually put them into practice. So listeners, grab a pen and paper or open up your Nights app because we're about to do some deep diving of our own.
Okay, let's start with the big picture. Think back to 10 years ago. Where were you in life? What were your biggest goals and aspirations? How did you define success back then? Don't just think about it. Jot down your answers. We'll pause here for a minute or two to give you some time to reflect.
All right, now that you've had a chance to rewind a decade, let's shift gears and think about the past 3 years. How have things changed? Have your priorities shifted? How has your definition of success evolved? Again, take a few minutes to write down your thoughts.
Now let's zoom in even closer. Think about the past 12 months. What were your highlights? What were your biggest challenges? What lessons did you learn? Don't be afraid to get specific here. Jot down those wins, big and small, those moments where you felt proud of yourself, where you pushed past your comfort zone, where you learned something new.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time, but I want to emphasize that this isn't about rushing through the process. It's about really taking the time to reflect and appreciate how far you've come. And if you haven't had a chance to write down your answers to all of these questions, that's okay. Hit pause and come back to it when you have some quiet time to yourself.
And remember, the book emphasizes that this is an ongoing practice. It's not a one-time exercise. The more you practice measuring your progress backward, the more ingrained that gain mindset will become.
You know what's really striking me as we go through this process is how much can change in just a few years, even a few months. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and lose sight of the bigger picture. But when you take the time to reflect, you realize that those daily efforts are adding up to something meaningful.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the big milestones. It's about celebrating those small wins along the way. It's about recognizing that progress isn't always linear. There will be setbacks, detours, and unexpected challenges. But by focusing on the gain, you can navigate those bumps in the road with more resilience and grace.
You know, the book talks about a quote from the British philosopher Alain de Botton, and it really resonated with me. He said, anyone who isn't embarrassed of who they were last year probably isn't learning enough. And I think that's such a powerful reminder that growth often involves making mistakes and being willing to course correct.
It's about embracing that journey of continuous improvement. And remember, being in the game doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It's about acknowledging your progress and celebrating those wins, even when you stumble along the way. It's about having compassion for yourself and recognizing that you're always a work in progress.
That's so important, especially in a culture that often glorifies perfectionism. But you know what? This whole conversation is making me realize that focusing on the game can actually be a really powerful antidote to that perfectionism trap. When you're focused on how far you've come, you're less likely to get caught up in comparing yourself to others or beating yourself up for not being good enough.
I couldn't agree more. It's about shifting your focus from external validation to internal satisfaction. It's about defining success on your own terms and celebrating your unique journey.
This is blowing my mind. It's like this whole new way of looking at things is opening up.
It's exciting, isn't it? And the best part is that anyone can do this. It's not about having some special talent or skill set. It's simply about making a conscious choice to shift your perspective.
Okay, so we've walked through several different time frames, uncovering gains along the way.
Right.
But here's the question that's swirling in my mind right now. How do we make this a sustainable practice? How do we cultivate a gain mindset that permeates our everyday lives, not just when we're doing these specific reflective exercises?
That's where the book's final chapter comes in. Transform every experience into a gain. And I think that's where things get really interesting. It's about taking ownership of our past, even those difficult moments, and finding the lessons and opportunities for growth within them.
Intriguing. So it's not just about celebrating wins. It's about using all of our experiences, both positive and negative, to fuel our future growth.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we'll dive into in part 3 of our deep dive. We'll explore how to transform those experiences, cultivate psychological flexibility, and truly make the gain a way of life.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the gap and the gain. You know, it's been a real journey so far, hasn't it? We've explored this whole idea of measuring backward, celebrating those wins we often overlook, and even like revisiting our past to unearth those hidden gains. But now I'm really curious about how we actually put this all into practice. Like, how do we make the gain a sustainable mindset, something that like shapes our everyday lives, you know?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one thing to intellectually grasp these concepts.
Right.
But it's another thing entirely to actually embody them.
For sure.
The book argues that a key part of living in the gain is learning to transform every experience, even those we might initially perceive as negative, into a learning opportunity.
Okay, so it's about like finding the silver lining, right? Always looking for the positive in every situation, even when things are tough.
Well, it's a bit deeper than that, I think. It's not about denying or minimizing the challenges we face, you know?
Right.
It's about choosing how we respond to those challenges.
Right.
Remember the story of Howard Getson, the trader who lost millions during the 2008 financial crisis?
Oh, yeah, that one really stuck with me. I'll talk about a high-stakes example.
Right.
To be honest, I think a lot of us would have just like spiraled into a pit of despair if we'd been in his shoes.
Yeah, but here's what's so remarkable about his story. Instead of letting that loss define him, he used it as a catalyst for like radical change.
Wow.
You know, he realized that his investment strategies were flawed, and he ended up leveraging artificial intelligence to create a system that removed human bias.
Okay.
He literally turned this massive financial setback into a springboard for innovation.
That's incredible. It's like he took this huge gap moment and transformed it into a gain that like propelled him forward.
Exactly. And that's the core message here.
Yeah.
We have a choice in how we frame our experiences.
Right.
We can either be victims of circumstance or we can use those experiences, no matter how challenging,
Yeah.
to become more knowledgeable, more resilient, more capable.
So is that what the book means by psychological flexibility? I know we touched on that briefly in part 2, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on what that actually means.
That's a great question. And you're right. Psychological flexibility is a key ingredient in this whole gain equation. It's essentially the ability to adapt to changing circumstances without getting stuck in those negative thought patterns or rigid behaviors.
Right.
It's about being open to new perspectives, willing to experiment, and ultimately bouncing back from setbacks with more grace and resilience.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually cultivate that kind of flexibility? It sounds great in theory, but I'm not sure how to put it into practice.
Well, the book suggests this really powerful exercise called the Experience Transformer.
Okay.
It involves revisiting past experiences, even those that were difficult or painful,
Right.
and asking yourself a series of reflective questions.
You gotcha.
It's a way to deliberately reframe those experiences and extract the hidden lessons and opportunities within them.
Oh, I love a good reflective exercise. I'm ready to dive in. Walk me through it.
Okay, so here's how it works. First, think of a specific experience from your past, something that's been weighing on you. Even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah.
It could be a missed opportunity, a conflict, a perceived failure, anything that's taking up space in your mental real estate.
Okay, got it. I've got one in mind. What's next?
Okay, now ask yourself, what did I learn from this experience that I can use to be more effective in the future? It's about extracting the knowledge and the wisdom that came from that experience, even if it wasn't immediately apparent at the time.
Interesting. So it's like turning those so-called failures into valuable data points.
Exactly. Now, the second question is, what did I learn from this experience about what I don't want?
Okay.
This is about clarifying your values and boundaries.
Yeah.
Recognizing what doesn't align with your goals or your vision for your life.
That's really powerful. It's like using those experiences to refine our internal compass so we can make more intentional choices moving forward.
Absolutely. Now, for the third question, knowing what I know now, because I've had this experience, how will I approach my future differently? This is where we start applying those lessons, making adjustments to our strategies, our habits, our mindsets, so we can create a better future.
It's amazing how this process shifts our focus from dwelling on the past to like actively shaping the future.
And finally, the fourth question is, what about this experience am I grateful for? Now, this might seem a bit counterintuitive, especially if the experience was really challenging.
Right.
But it's about finding those unexpected gifts, those moments of growth or resilience that might have emerged from the difficulty.
That's where the gain mindset really shines through, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about finding those nuggets of value in the most unexpected places.
You got it. And the amazing thing is when you consistently apply these questions to your experiences, you start to train your brain to automatically look for the gain in every situation. It becomes less of a conscious effort and more of a default way of thinking.
Okay, so we've transformed those experiences into gains, but how do we ensure that this gain mindset sticks? How do we make it an ingrained habit rather than something we have to constantly remind ourselves to do?
Well, the book emphasizes the importance of daily rituals, particularly optimizing that crucial hour before bed, what they call the sweet spot. Remember?
Well, yeah, that's where we ditch the smartphones, write down our 3 wins from the day, and outline our 3 wins for tomorrow, right?
Exactly. And by engaging in this ritual consistently,
Yeah.
you're not just ending your days on a positive note, you're actually priming your subconscious mind for success.
Yeah.
It's like planting those seeds of the gain so they can take root while you sleep.
I love that visual. It's like we're tending to our mental garden, nurturing those positive thought patterns so they can flourish.
And don't forget the power of accountability. There's a principle called Pearson's Law, which states that when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. So finding a supportive friend, a mentor, or an accountability partner to share those daily wins with can be a game changer.
It's like we're creating this positive feedback loop, amplifying those gains and accelerating our progress.
Yeah.
I'm starting to realize that this whole gap and gain concept isn't just about achieving some external outcome.
Wow.
It's about cultivating this deeper sense of inner peace and fulfillment. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we already possess and using that as a springboard for growth and joy.
That's beautifully said, and you've hit the nail on the head. It's not about denying our ambition or settling for mediocrity. It's about recognizing that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, from appreciating our journey and celebrating our progress along the way.
Mm.
It's about choosing to focus on the abundance that already exists in our lives, even amidst the challenges and setbacks.
Wow, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've gained so much insight into myself and my own mindset.
It's been a joy exploring these concepts with you. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. What gap are you currently fixated on that's stealing your joy? And what gain are you overlooking that could fill you with gratitude and inspire you to keep moving forward?
That's a powerful question. I encourage all of you listening to take some time to reflect on that. And remember, no matter where you are on your journey, there's always something to celebrate. There's always a gain to be found, even amidst the chaos and uncertainty.
So true. And as you move forward, remember that you have the power to choose your focus. You can choose to dwell on the gap, or you can choose to embrace the gain. The choice is always yours.
It's been such a pleasure diving deep with you all today. We hope you found this exploration as enlightening as we have. Until next time, keep those gains coming.